Hi lovelies, it's Michelle. Welcome back to my channel. I am playing with some paper artsy goodies today, and I wanted to show you how I made this background using pretty much only stencils and some stamps. So normally I would start my background with a layer of solid paint first, different colors, but this time I decided I'm just going to do a couple of stencils. So I grabbed out my stash of stencils. These are not branded. I think there's one from Stencil Girl, but the others I actually don't know where they are from. Oh, I lied. I do start with some paint on the background before I started stenciling. So there we go. I'm starting with my Amsterdam acrylics, and I just used a pink, a turquoise, and a purple. And I'm just making these basically brush lines just to have something on the background there. I don't know why I started that way instead of just going in with stencils, but here we go. Okay, so I've got my colors down, and then I'm going to start going in with stencils. Again, I don't know where these are from. I've had these stencils for years and years. They are not branded. I just kind of pick them up when I go to the shops and I see something nice. I just get it. So first layer is pink, and I'm using this pattern. From the moment I bought this stencil, I loved it. I loved this florally burst, I guess that's what it is. I don't know. And now I'm going in with the turquoise color, and this one is from Stencil Girl. I one time did a Stencil Girl shop, and I bit the bullet to pay in dollars instead of rands, and also to pay for the import fees and whatnot. I don't think I'll do it again. It did work out quite expensive, and with our postal service, the first batch got lost. It never reached me. And then, shame, the guys at Stencil Girl sent me another batch, and yeah, it was a big hullabaloo, but we got there in the end. Okay, I've also gone in with a little bit of mark making, and now I'm going in with some white stenciling as well. This is a circular one, and I'm just going to add in a little bit of white space. I know that there is some white space left because I obviously didn't cover the whole of the background, but I felt like my background was getting a little bit too dark, so I just want to add some brightness back into my page. And as you can see, apart from my paint marks in the back, I've built this background with just using stencils, and I'm going to go in with some stamping. So I grabbed out this pink ink and another set from Paper Artsy, and I'm just going to use a couple of those stamps, sorry, and stamp randomly here and there, just making marks in the background. I always love it when I make my backgrounds and I add little unexpected bits to it. So I always feel like when I go through my journals, I have a closer look at what's going on in the background. There's always a little surprise there that you didn't expect. So if you had to look really closely at this page, you would see the first lots of stamps that I did there in the colors. Although you can't see it on screen, you can actually see it in real life when you look up close. So I also felt like I needed even more white, so I just grabbed out my Edding paint pen, scribbled some over the top of that stamp, and then stamped it off. Whenever I use paint on my stamps, and I would advise you the same thing, is when you're finished, clean off that paint before it dries on your stamp. If it dries on your stamp, the paint will dry hard and it will compromise the pattern that's on your stamp, because acrylic paints are plastic, and they dry hard, and they'll be very, very difficult to get off without actually ruining your stamp. So go ahead and stamp with paint, but make sure that you clean it very well. Okay, I wanted to use this beautiful girl on this stamp from Paper Artsy. I think this is a Tracy Scott one. So I've stamped her out with my black archival ink, and now I'm covering the whole girl with some Paper Artsy chalk paint. It's fresco paint, I think they call it, and this is Nougat, so it's kind of an off-white one. It's a really great base, it's quite opaque, and then I'm going to give it a little dry. So the reason I do this, you might think it's a little bit silly to do things 2 times, but I am going to stamp over that painted blob again, excuse my head. So the reason I do this is I wanted to block out the background of my girl to make it easier so she stands out off the background. So that's why I painted, I stamped her in first, then I blocked out the complete background, covering everything, and then I could just stamp over the top of her again. So the Paper Artsy stamps are cut quite close to the edge of where the lines are, so it's pretty easy to just line up the stamp again, if that makes sense. And now I've got a blank background for my girl to paint some colors over the top. If I could have stamped her on top of the white page first, but then it would have been quite a hassle to try and work around her with my background colors, so that's why I chose to do it this way. I also could have maybe stamped her out on a separate piece of paper and then glued her on, but for this day, this is what I chose. So I'm again using my chalk paints from Paper Artsy, and I wanted to make her stand out from the background by using contrasting colors. Now, in the end, I really didn't like the dress that I gave her. If you've been around for a while, you'll know that I don't do well with working with reds and oranges, and this turned out red and orange. So I think that is my main grievance against this page, is that I just don't love the colors on her dress. She looked maybe a little bit like Belle from Beauty and the Beast with that yellow dress on, and that's definitely not the look that I went for. But anywho, it is what it is. She does stand up from the background, and that's what I wanted. So I've gone in with a base layer of my Paper Artsy paint, and now I'm going in with colored pencils, and I'm adding shading to the hair, to the skin, and I'm just bringing some life into her by giving her that shading. She doesn't look quite as flat on the page. You can see even in that hair, just adding that little bit of shading just around the edges, it makes the hair look not realistic because it's pink, but it doesn't look quite as flat. And now I'm also going in with some shading on the colored bits on her dress. For the skin tone, I don't know why, but I do love shading with purples. So I started with a darker purple, and then I worked my way through the purples into the pinks, and then more of a peachy color for the skin tone. And the dress, I'm just coloring in normally over that chalk paint. The great thing about this chalk paint is that they take coloring pencils really, really well. These pencils of mine are not particularly expensive or fancy, but they still go over the paint really well. I didn't quite like that orangey bit there, even though I used the red paint. The red paint that I've got is quite translucent, so it came up a little bit orange. So I just brightened that up with my paint pens, And I'm also adding a little bit of shading into the dress with my paint pens. And now I'm going in and just adding details here and there to finish her off. I'm also putting little dots, so her hair and that already has some details in, and obviously those got a little bit covered up with the paint. And so I'm just going in again and adding details, adding shading. This is, again, you've seen me faffing about so many times, and I always say it's the faffing that really helps bring a page together. And you'll see how she just comes to life the more I add black and white lines, add the details, add a little bit more shading, just going over the top of what's stamped there already. It just helps to bring things together. And it will help her to pop out of the page again a little bit more. So always draw in the line work again. Number one, this is to define the edges and make my figures pop out from the page, but also it kind of trains your hand into knowing how to draw the shape of a face or an eye or a mouth or whatever. So it's really good for muscle memory if you want to attempt your own drawing of a face at some stage in time. It's great practice. Okay, so just finishing her up, and I'm going to give her a dry. And for this page, I decided that I would do a handwritten quote. But first, I'm shading. I felt like she wasn't popping out quite enough, so I've just gone around with my Stabilo all pencil, and I'm just adding some shading around my girl to help push the background back a little bit, just around the edges of where she's sitting on that page. And I thought that that helped a little bit more. I did go through my stash of paper artsy things to see if there's a quote anywhere that I could use. And I looked through the tissue paper and through the stamp sets, but I couldn't really find something. So I decided that I would just handwrite a quote. And here we go. Keep taking chances. That was my quote. So I first started with white, but then I thought that's blending into the background a little bit too much. And then I grabbed out a new pen to see if that was going to work. And then I think I decided, no, it's actually not working. And I switched to black. So the way that I do my quotes when I do handwritten quotes is I first write it out with a thin paint pen to get the spacing right. And then I go over the top and I fill in the gaps with my black pen. So I'm extending them, I'm making them thicker, I'm making little triangle bits on the tops and bottoms of where they end, and just filling up that space so it looks like I've planned the perfect spacing for my words, which I didn't. Okay, now that they are black, I'm going to add a little bit of a highlight on them all, because you can see that they are just sinking into the background there. And I'm just doing a highlight on the left and the bottom. And then I also went around them with I think I used a blue alcohol ink marker just around the edges, to make a shadow that makes them look like they are floating off the page. Alright, so if you have not used stencils to build up a background, this is your sign. Go ahead and do that. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, please subscribe, leave me a comment. I love hearing from you, and I will chat to you again very soon. Okay, bye!